Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
All right, so 2 to 3 minutes is a little ambitious for this.
That's what I thought.
At this point in our program, we introduce ourselves by first name or first and last name, whichever you prefer. I think it's helpful to take a breath before you say your name, just so we don't rush through too quickly. I'll begin. My name is Michael.
Chris.
My name is Michael.
I'm Jim. Greg.
I'm Lies.
Mike.
Nathan.
I'm Jack.
I'm Mark.
I'm Shantanu.
My name is Jerry. I'm Darcy.
Peter. Ralph.
Carol.
Jim.
My name is Roy.
Joseph Fisher.
Mark. John.
Carl.
Renee.
Mike. I'm Jerry.
I'm Richard Azzolini.
I'm Lee Robbins.
Jose.
Alan.
David.
Tom. I'm Mark.
Russell. I'm Lynn.
My name is Gary.
I'm Ben.
I'm David.
Peter.
I'm Henry Rabinowitz.
My name's Greg Rowe.
And Jeff.
I'm Carl Wolf. I'm Kay.
Evan.
Anthony.
I'm Peter. I'm Omar.
I'm Marty.
Roger.
Josh.
Is that it? Did we get everybody? Okay.
I'm Paul Shepard.
Marvin Snow.
Leor.
Joe Castor-Vinci.
My name is Val Miranda.
My name is Brian.
Richard.
I'm Casey.
Steve.
All right.
Will.
Our speaker this morning is Will Kabat-Zinn, and I believe this is his first time at GBF. Will has practiced Vipassana meditation intensively in the US and Burma. He teaches regularly at Spirit Rock, the California Institute for Integral Studies, and the Insight Meditation Community of San Francisco. He has taught meditation and awareness practices to incarcerated youth since 2001. While in teacher training with Jack Kornfield, Will is also a marriage and family therapist intern in private practice in San Francisco and Oakland, seeing individuals and couples for psychotherapy. Welcome, Will.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. Sometimes I talk a little quietly, and it's not mic'd, so if you can't hear me at any point in the back, let me know. I'm going to try to give a shorter-ish talk and then have a little bit of a longer time for us to dialogue with each other about practice, about your practice. It's just a personal preference. I kind of like that back and forth. Because then we also get to hear from you get to hear from each other. And I was thinking, actually, as you were making the announcements earlier, I really like that word fellowship. So we use the word sangha a lot, but this fellowship is a really nice idea. I should have looked it up before I came, but I didn't. So I don't even know what the definition is, but the sense of it that I have is really that you're kind of really in something together, exploring something together. And I think that that's a very useful kind of thing to have around Dharma practice specifically, because it's such a weird thing to do, you know? And the territory can be confusing and subtle, and it's a territory that is not just part of our kind of common cultural conversation. It's well outside of that. So hopefully shorter talk. Sometimes I get carried away. Hopefully shorter talk, and then some time for dialogue. So one thing I've been kind of thinking about lately is how kind of quickly and habitually I'll just say we, the big we, tend to kind of pass over ourselves. And maybe it's a Western thing, I don't know. But there's a way in which, and I think this is also part of our culture, we tend not to think there's a lot of value in here. So there's a lot of energy around improving what's here, making myself better, making myself look better, sound better, seem better. How you doing? I'm great. How do we become more impressive? Yeah, how do we improve our situation? But it's a lot of kind of away from, it's like out or building. And it's almost sort of reflexive for a lot of us. It's what we do. And is it an American thing? I don't know. But it's certainly very prevalent, you know. How often do you ask somebody, what were you up to this weekend? I was just being with myself. Nobody says that. Yeah. It's not even like, people wouldn't sort of reflexively say, oh, that sounds great. Good for you. They'd be like, what? Nobody was around? Or you didn't get invited anywhere? You didn't have It's sort of like there must be something lacking if that's something that was your response. Yeah. Or, you must just relaxing. Yeah. But I think one of the things that, for me, is so exciting about Dharma practice, meditative practice, is that there's kind of, and this is just the way I hold it, there's kind of an assumption that there's something about you that is extremely amazing in you. Yeah. That what's inside of you is actually more valuable than anything you could find out there. And let's say out there in a kind of big way. That's a big deal. And it's very interesting to even watch your mind in the moment when somebody says that. What kicks in and says, or, but I'm, or, there's like very quickly some things you often, but there's probably also a part of you that kind of feels that or knows that on some level. So there's both. But let's be honest. If we really believed that, we'd probably spend a lot more time looking in here. If we really believed it. Right? I mean, if somebody told you that there were, $50 million buried under the floor of your apartment or under your house, you'd be digging like crazy. People would be like, hey, you want to, nah, I can't dig today. I got to do my bills. No, everything else would be on hold. You'd be... So I'm not saying you should put your life on hold. You need to keep... this is an ongoing endeavor. But I feel like that kind of illustrates... Because you can look, we invest in what we believe in, right? We do. Whether it's financially or just with our time, we invest in what we believe in. And I think this is something that we, as a culture, don't believe in. That's why people don't invest in it. Yeah? We do invest in self-improvement a lot. But we don't we don't really believe this thing that already there's something of extreme, maybe the most extreme value in you. You, what you are, is the real treasure. I don't know. So for me, that's why meditation practice is exciting. Yeah, because the practice is kind of like the tools for doing the excavation. Yeah, it's the means for looking in here. Because without those tools, it's hard to do, be like digging with your hands. You just you get torn up and bloody. But actually, it's less dramatic than that. It's just if you have absolutely no meditative training, somebody says take a look inside and see who you really are. Well, I guess if you're really interested, that might be enough. But often, if you sit with yourself and you just end up thinking a lot or tying yourself in knots trying to figure stuff out with your thinking. So it's very, very useful to cultivate a kind of steady, sustained attending, which is what we do in meditation practice. Breathing in, breathing out. What's the point of that? The point is it develops a very steady, attentive knowing. So the knowing is actually here all the time. It's not something you create. And this is also part of the richness of your endowment, let's say. Yeah? Just think about seeing. So that's amazing. Seeing is amazing. The whole world is appearing because you're seeing it. You're just looking around, like this whole room is not just life happening. This is happening in your awareness. Yeah. If you close your eyes, okay, this isn't like if the tree falls in the woods and nobody hears it. This is not that kind of philosophical. It's just experiential. You close your eyes, the room is gone in the visual sense. Yeah. So, wow, what is that? Even just to explore that a little. That all of this is being seen as arising within your awareness, which means your awareness is something quite vast. Yeah? As far as you can see, stand on a hilltop and look out. As far as you can see, where is that arising? To what is that arising? Well, to you. So, same with hearing, smelling, tasting. Aside from the kind of habitually very distracted mind, which keeps us from being able to kind of look deeply in here, just the kind of buzzy on the surface, normal chatter that you notice when you sit down and meditate. It's like, That's where we tend to live. Yeah? And it's part of the reason why it's harder for us to experience the kind of depth and breadth of who we are. Yeah? It's like, you're just on the surface of a choppy ocean and you're kind of just getting bounced around by the waves. You sort of forget that there's, maybe hundreds of feet of just clear, still water underneath, because you're just caught up in that level. And that's the level we're caught up in much of the time. So as we train, as we practice, just coming back to the breathing, coming back to the actuality of the present moment, out of our speculative thinking, it's like you develop some kind of momentum of steadiness in the present, not that caught up buzziness. And it really is a kind of settling into what's below the surface of the mind. I know these spatial metaphors are all wrong, but they're useful as kind of pointers. Yeah? So when you're caught up in that surface buzziness of just habitual thinking, life does not feel restful. Yeah? And even if you take a break from all your activities, it may not feel like rest. And the reason is because you're not resting. You're caught here. So we're like unconsciously, we're just kind of slaves to our habitual thinking. And it's not of any fault of our own. It's just that we haven't learned at all how to be in another way. So a lot of the first meditation instruction is what? It's noticing when your mind goes off into some thought world, isn't it? And you come back to the breathing. Sometimes people think, oh, that's just the warm-up instruction. But that's something very profound. You're coming out of a mind world into just the experience of presentness, without a filter. Just for a moment. A thought filter. Because we got thought filters going all the time. Yeah? You look at somebody who you know, and you've got just a million concepts in between you and them. Often. Yeah? Judgments, ideas, preconceptions, hopes, fears in the way. You look at somebody you don't know, and the same thing. It's very hard for us to experience sort of freshly, to kind of connect through this layer. And part of the living in this layer is that life tends to feel kind of dead. Because that layer has a deadness to it. It's not actually living. Only life is living. But that conceptual layer of, oh, that's a chair, that's the floor, that's Marty, that's Joe, that's my father, that's my mother. It's not that that's wrong. That is Marty on a, conventional level. But what happens is we start to get stuck in the name level, in the I already know part. And then all of this presentness, which is actually here all the time. Yeah? The seeing, the richness of the seeing, the vitality of the present, it's obscured. And so people seem boring. You think you already know everything about them. And life has a drudgery to it then. Yeah? And it's not the way it is. It's just the way it is for you when you're caught like that. Don't blame yourself. This is this human condition. Yeah. So this thing of noticing the thought worlds is very, very valuable. And you can do it. Yeah? Practice helps to be able to see, because the mental level happens very fast. But with practice, you can get good at seeing the mental layers happening, even in real time, while you're talking. Yeah? While you're walking around, while you're sitting and looking. You can just play with this. Play the judging game. Sit down outside, and it's called people watching, and just watch the stories and the labels that come up. It's really fun. Don't beat yourself up about it. Enjoy it. It's funny. Because it's all made up anyway. And what's tragic is just that we believe it all. because that makes life gets depressing. So, but this is a realm that we can start to observe, to learn about, and these thoughts about life are what determine our experience of life in the moment, and they really are like worlds that are born in your mind. And you can notice this just sitting. You're sitting, breathing in and out, and your mind's wandering, you come back, and then all of a sudden you're in some situation. Like what happened last week with so-and-so, and they said this, and you said this, and why didn't they understand? And you're there. You're having all the feelings that happened there. I mean, it really is like virtual reality. It's as if it were happening, but it's not happening anywhere except in your mind. And so we know this. It's like, oh yeah, tell me something I don't know. But we don't know this. Because if we knew this, we wouldn't spend 4 days there. It's like, if you were to choose a virtual reality to visit, would you want to visit that one? No, you wouldn't. That's a miserable one. But it seems real. It's like you're in the movie. So you're an actor in the movie, and you're not aware that it's a movie. When it's a movie, you watch it differently. You may still be caught up in it, because it's exciting, and then so-and-so didn't, But if you see the movie 150 times, it's a very different experience. So we've seen the same movies over and over again, but it's like the first time, every time. And so it's just has... Anyway, so this realm of the thinking as the filter of experience and the sort of shaper of the world is just a very, very wonderful realm to explore. And because it also is the doorway to freedom from mental prisons. One of these is the future. One of these thought worlds is the future. The future does not exist anywhere. You've heard this before, but I'd like to say it again, because it's really true. And there's another thing you kind of maybe hear, but we don't really get it. The future doesn't exist. You're making up an idea in your head. And that is your experience of the future. But it's very, very made up. It's not that that's not a useful capacity to have. I don't want you to lobotomize yourself and get rid of that. It'd make it hard to go to work. It'd make it hard to prepare for whatever, retirement. But we live in that. And that is the source of almost much of our worry and stress and dis-ease, is these future scenarios that we're creating and then terrified of and scared of and trying to... and it's very useful to keep practicing this, seeing a world be born. The world of, it's not gonna, or, and then it won't, and then I won't, or I will become, or I won't become. These are thoughts. They feel really real. That's what's so amazing about them. It's really, when we're in it, and we're caught in it, it's like it just is reality. But it's not really reality. So, this is self-exploration. This is why it's fun, and also why it's valuable. It's really valuable. Because then, to free ourselves from these created prisons. And some of these created prisons are even positive ideas. Like about how special you are. And I don't mean in a kind of wholesome self-esteem way. It's good to feel that way. You are special. Every single one of you is totally unique. There's not another person in the universe exactly like you. That's amazing. So there should be no doubt about specialness. Now, of course, there may be a story about how specially flawed you are. Often there is. That's a story. It has developed over time, and that's why it feels very entrenched and real. because he probably started early, that story. Yeah? So we don't even think of it as a story, we just think of it as, there is something broken about me, or there is something incomplete. This is almost universal when I talk about it. Something, when you get down to it, when you stop listening to your iPod all the time and you stop spending all the time on the internet trying to get away from that feeling that something is really wrong with you. People feel that often. Something not quite right, something not quite complete, something broken or off, some variation of that. And you feel it, so it feels real. Yeah? But I would posit that has developed over time it's an idea, it's a belief. When that belief is not present, you do not experience it. That's a sign. Like when you're with someone who thinks you're the greatest person in the world, you do not experience that thing. But then later you experience it, so you think, it's still there, it's just underneath. But it's really that idea reemerges. So because they develop over time and from young ages, like your attempt to make sense of the world at a young age often, why is it that I feel different? Or why is it that my parents seem to hate me? Or why is it that I can't seem to have things go fluidly with these crazy people? You don't think they're crazy, they're just adults, so they must be, right? Anyway, these things get started early, and then over time it's just like, me. But so even this level we can investigate. Yeah? Start with the easy ones, but these ones, these deep beliefs about yourselves, also can be seen for what they are. And in the seeing, in the deep seeing over time, again and again, we stop believing them. Just like you don't believe the movie you've seen 50 times because you see that it's a movie, even if it's a really compelling movie. Yeah. Okay. And when we're not totally caught up in beliefs, concepts about the world and ourselves, we really start to sense what is here underneath that. And what is here underneath all of that is the best freaking thing in the world. It's not a thing. Peace, freedom, ease, that is your nature. But we don't have access to it much. And mostly because we haven't hung out with ourselves long enough. And with a certain kind of tools and interest and kind of deep looking that it requires. So, just like in the Lord of the Rings, the fellowship of... I'm just thinking fellowship, right? This is the fellowship. The fellowship of the ring. There's a journey. And there's like all kinds of scary dudes in that journey. They're in here though. It's an inner journey. Yeah? But it's quite a journey. It's not like, let's take the elevator to Mordor and get the ring. No, you got to go through all this territory, inner territory. And there's scary feelings and thoughts. There's barren plains where you just, you have to sit with that. That's part of the territory, your loneliness, your fear. These are things that in the path of practice we meet rather than try to skip over. That is the way the journey unfolds, and only from that. Yeah? So all of the things that you think you're trying to get away from, that is the path. Yeah? That anxiety feeling that just feels like, just let me turn like Peter. Let me just call somebody. Yeah? That's part of the path. Yeah? That feeling lonely. Nobody hangs out with loneliness. Why? Nobody feels bad for loneliness? Loneliness is lonely, probably. Give it some attention. Yeah? So, but this is the way we come to know ourselves. No, we're not afraid of any of it over time. But we're always trying to skip over what's actually happening to get to the good stuff. And the irony of that is that doesn't take us anywhere. Okay. So I'll stop talking now. And but maybe we can just open it up, and I'd love to just be in dialogue about, I don't know, you could anything that I said that you're, or not, just because the way I see it, anybody who's doing any kind of practice like this, we're in the territory together. We're already on the journey. I don't know where we are I read The Lord of the Rings a long time ago, but we're somewhere in there, and we don't know how long the journey, it's sort of, so let's talk about it. What are we encountering, and what's,
So, thank you for very insightful leading us down the path. It's great. It occurs to me that, you're talking about this need for self-improvement that we have. I find that that's what leads me into these revisiting past conversations and conflicts, because I'm trying to evaluate what could I have done different, what could I do better, and then how can I improve on that in the future. Right? So, but it devolves into this loop that goes for 3 hours, when really I can evaluate for 3 minutes and say, next time I'll do that.
Right.
So how can we tame that recycling of the same thing over and over and over beyond its usefulness?
No, I appreciate that point. I think it's a good point. It's like, it's not that we don't want to improve. It's improving ourselves is a good thing too. It's like, to want to do it better next time. You have a conversation, you say something, you're like, something didn't go right there. That's very useful.
Be more skillful.
Yeah, be more skillful. That's part of Buddhism too. Look at what you did and the effects and kind of. But as you say, it takes on this whole other thing. And I think it's a sort of I don't have like a simple answer to that, but I think part of what it is for me, is feeling the suffering of being stuck in it. I think we have a natural intelligence in our organism, not even in our thinking, which doesn't like to hurt ourselves. Just like you reflexively take your hand out of a fire and stuff like that. So I think that actually, when you allow yourself to sit in the pain, the dukkha, to use the Buddhist term, the dukkha of being caught in something, that's the value of being there consciously. Rather than trying to stop it, is that your organism naturally stops wanting to invest in it. Because we invest in what we believe in, and we believe actually that hashing it out, even just unconsciously. Consciously you may think, no, that has no purpose. But if you really didn't believe in it, it wouldn't happen. So sometimes there's a disconnect between what our organism believes and what our kind of, we've learned, sort of the cognitive level. So that's interesting to notice. So I think it's, whenever I'm caught up in something, I say, I must still believe in this if I'm doing it. Some part of me must. So the value of hanging out in the dukkha of that is that your organism starts to feel like, you don't even have to do anything special. You don't have to try to correct next time. But stay in those places is the value of being stuck. And I think there's a real value in it. Also, I think that the more we are living in the present, and this happens gradually, the more these kinds of seeings just happen. And once you have the insight, you kind of can sort of, it's just like anything, like if you're playing basketball, if you're new at basketball, you're like, well, we lost that game. Why did we lose? And you might have to try to think, you have to figure out about basketball to understand why you lost. But if you play all the time, I don't play basketball at all, so this may make no sense the way I'm talking about it. Just as an example. I don't know why that came out. It's an American thing. People do it. So if you play basketball, I'm terrible at basketball. I've tried. If you play basketball all the time, it's just sort of like, oh yeah, so I did this and then this happened. You don't have to spend 15 minutes trying to think about it because you're used to the territory. So this is the value of mindful living. more. The more we're really present in our activity, the more those corrections kind of can happen. It's like, oh yeah, I was angry and I was pretending not to be. And that's why I ended up saying that. Or I didn't want to think I was angry. I was trying to be nice and Buddhist. But I leaked out this little thing. Oh yeah, that's what I did. So anyway, is that helpful?
Yeah, very much.
Yeah. But it's a really good thing. So self-improvement is also important. It's not like, sometimes people think like, okay, now I won't clean my room. Now I don't need to go to work anymore. I'll just work on myself and no. You have to take care of yourself. But when we believe that ultimate happiness lies in self-improvement, or ultimate happiness lies in, how I look or how how much people think I'm a great guy. Yeah, of course I want people to think I'm a nice guy, a great guy. But if that's where ultimate happiness lies for me, it's just not going to come from there. So that's just what I mean about the self-improvement thing. Yeah, anybody else? Yeah, and then you.
I'm wondering how much value you find into looking into our childhood past to figure out stuff around our present day sufferings, especially dealing with people, relationships, versus just being in the moment and realizing that that's all in the past. It's not scary anymore, and you can just be here. Is there any?
Yeah. So what's the value in looking? I'm a therapist,
I know.
so no, I believe in that. I think that's very useful. To look into your history and how did I come to be formed in this way? Looking at your family system, and I think there's a lot of value in that. And where is all of that happening? It's happening in the present. So when you're doing therapy or you're even just on your own reflecting on it, you can then be with those feelings that come up. So that's where they come together. It's like the past is also happening in the present, but it doesn't mean it's not valuable to explore it. I think it's extremely valuable, and I think, I believe in that. Sometimes, and you can just notice this, and this is where paying attention really helps. Sometimes you might notice with yourself at a certain time or with other people, they kind of get really stuck in their story about the past. It's just something to watch out for. It's like, so you might form all kinds of insights about how things happen in your family, but sometimes that, if you're not paying attention, that can be very liberating, or it can just reify a story about you or about your family that starts to become its own prison. And that's not wrong. It's just then you say, oh, this is starting. It's how are you using it? Just like, how are you using this? So that's just something I think for people to look for. And I think sometimes that's the shortcoming of kind of therapeutic insight without a kind of a practice, or without a kind of an awareness of how we can make that into an identity. I am this person, or I am the person who this happened to. Not as it's good to know so that it informs, like, that's why I'm doing this, or, I can see how this got shaped, where it becomes, I am this person. And it becomes a reified identity, and that's a small place. Does that speak to what you're... Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
I just want to say how much I appreciate your ability today to let yourself be really in deep self-space and share that with us. You ushered in a really wonderful sense of that place you were talking about. My experience, something in meditation that went alongside that, is the territory and the singing and reality. And the reality is that the universe is an expansive universe, and it keeps expanding. And so my being was out identifying with the entire universe and then bringing it all back to the infinitesimal. You have value in your essence. And your talk today felt like it really was in that space.
Cool. I'll take it. Thanks for sharing that. That's... just what you're speaking to about the vastness and the particularity. I think that's a really I think that's a really valuable space for us to just to hold the both, because sometimes it's easy to kind of go on one or the other. So thanks for articulating that. Yes.
I appreciate when you're talking about the how we can linger in the future, this fantasized future that we have, and I think I heard you say it's a mystery. I see how much the world pressures me to make predictions. As a fellow clinician, when I see people who work in business, it's all about the next quarter and how much you can make. And I think that my struggle with when I linger either too much in the past or too much in the future, I basically suffer from omnipotence, I think. I forget that it's a mystery. Part of me wants to rewrite the past. I should have.
Yeah.
It's just another.
Right.
It's mental masturbation. To me, wanting to say, "Oh, if I could redo this, then I would do it." You said I should have brought the definition of fellowship. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So then you can
There's
kind
a sense
of
of omnipotence there that I can let go of and just accept mystery.
Yeah.
Life plays out. It played out how it did, and it can play out in ways that I can't possibly imagine. And I forget that constantly.
It's easy to forget that. Yeah. And I think that's it is easy to forget that. And there is that kind of thing of like, I already know, or I already should know. And that kind of knowing is a kind of a narrow knowing. It's like, yeah. Oh, yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for your discussion of mindfulness and meditation. It's been substantially, for me, the most compelling explanation about the value of this, which is the area of practice that concentration that I find really difficult. And I wanted to ask you about one particular aspect of it, which I suspect you probably have some familiarity with, the work of Stephen Levine around pain, and which I used when I had a hip replacement some 6 years ago, which I had a lot of it generally, which is focused on awareness rather than distraction. And my experience, which is, as he discusses it, was largely for its disappearance, and a couple of times for the closest to enlightenment or transcendental experiences I've had. And I wondered if you might, it's a particular area of mindfulness.
The disappearance of what? What was
the disappearance of the sensation of what I described to myself as
pain.
As pain.
I see. Yeah.
Suffering is probably.
I haven't read. I know of him. I haven't read. I read something of his, but a long time ago. So
it's in Who Dies.
Who Dies? Yeah. Okay. Another book I haven't read. So I just want to admit that. But I think I can say a few things about kind of just reflections on what you're saying, which I think is like, around pain. It's really a great kind of pain is such a great like microcosm of the world to explore, because it's something we don't want to be with normally. And so our strategy for dealing with it tends to be distraction, or like to get away from it or try to cover it over. And partly I think what you're speaking to is that when you discover that when you actually turn toward it with awareness, that there's a kind of a lot to be discovered there about.
Well, it turns into sensation, as he describes it, and as my experience was.
So pain as a concept is one thing. And then as you explore the actuality of the experience, you discover there actually isn't one thing called pain. There's a kind of, it breaks down into minute sensations, changing, moving, stabbing, poking, even those are concepts, but it's a fluid field, yeah? So I think that's a very interesting realm of exploration. And as you say, it can be very freeing. And this is very interesting with pain, is that the experience of pain and suffering can be two different things. You can be with pain and not have a kind of mental suffering with it. It's one of the Buddha's fundamental insights. And so I find another useful realm of working with pain is one, exploring the sensation itself as you're describing, and the other is watching what the mind creates out of the pain. The stories, the future. Notice how the future that you create is based on what's happening in this particular moment. You create tons of different futures depending on what's happening in a very, very small moment. If you're in pain, the future is the next 20 years of your horrible suffering, or the next however long of your limping around and not being able to do all the things that you love to do or whatever it is. And that is a realm of suffering. Yeah, I do that. I've had injuries and just to watch the mind create a future out of a moment of twinge or stab or, And so it's very interesting to kind of come back out of that and to see, the sensation itself. And often the sensation itself, even if it's pretty strong, is nowhere near as bad as that reality was. It's just pulsing. So that's very interesting. Same thing when things are going well. You're meditating, you have a moment of calm, and the next 20 years are your blazing enlightenment and how you're going to nurture all beings and become a monk. And, it's just like out of a few minutes of just stillness. So the future is very unfixed in that way. Does that speak to kind of what you're talking about? Yeah. But thanks for sharing that kind of as a first-hand experience, because that's good for people to hear, that even with that, it sounds like kind of intense pain, that in shifting your relationship to it in a practice-based way, actually you said, what were the words you said? You said
moments of enlightenment, disappearance of ordinary reality. I'm not sure.
So that's beautiful. It's like a gateway. You're really attending there.
We have time for one.
We do.
More question.
Okay.
I can say something. You went first.
I was still thinking about what you said about the way we get stuck in our stories. Mm-hmm. And the hardest thing for me in the world when I'm that stuck is to remind myself, this is not the most interesting thing about me. It's so hard to move from thinking this is the most interesting thing about me to thinking, if this is the most interesting thing about me, I'm really fucked. I don't know what techniques are best for moving from the one to the other, but...
Well, I don't know. See, I'm a little, my kind of bias is less around like techniques and more around just kind of sustained interest. I really believe that if you sustain your attention around any area you feel stuck, you will learn a lot, and that learning will be liberating. Especially if it's not analysis, but if it's kind of like sustained immersion in the territory experientially, sort of like, well, let's go back to my favorite sport, basketball. Like, if you don't play basketball, but you have read about it, and then you are trying to, like, think about it, yeah, you might have some interesting, you might have some interesting insights, but the best way to really learn about it is just to be on the court a lot. Yeah. Whatever your court is, yeah? Just to be in that territory, but with awareness. And then the learning just happens naturally. So that's a very interesting question. Like, well, how do I, in those moments, you kind of do believe that's the most interesting thing about you. And you do feel like you're fucked because you believe that. So it's like you're really in it. So I think the invitation of meditation for me is, let me actually be really in this and not try to get out. And what can I learn from really being in this? And that is exactly the opposite of what we always want to do. We want to even find a meditative fix for getting out of it. And that's I call that sometimes the high-class bypass. It's like, because you can actually get good at that too through meditating, like shifting your attention, but don't do that too quickly. Hang out in stuckness, When you're really suffering, a big shift is when your first impulse is like, oh, what's happening? Not like, yay, this is my favorite thing, but like, what is happening? And you're kind of getting close to it. So, yeah, hang out when you're really caught. Like, okay, how can I just accept being really caught? Can I just get more comfortable with really being caught? Because sometimes you'll be caught, sometimes you won't be. But it's actually making an identity out of any of it. And this is a paradox. I'll stop with this. The paradox of all of this is that as soon as you try to get away from any inner experience, it gets stronger. And you can check this out. But it's true of emotions, There's nothing better than to lock something in than trying to get away from it. It's like a paradox. You have to do some kind of like Aikido to do this stuff. You got to move into it. But not into it like, into it like, okay, fear. You practice that. Welcoming fear. Okay, can I just sit with fear? Where do I feel it? Can I just let it be here? Next time you feel fear, practice with that. Or anger. Anyway, I'm going on and on. Is that helpful though? Yeah, okay. So yeah, we're out of time.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you all. It's been fun.
If you come back again, we'll call it the return of the king.
The return. Let's call it the return of the kings, because that's the point. You're the kings.
Can you stay a while during our social period if people have additional questions?
Yeah, I can stay for about 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Announcements. Yes.
Yes. We've gotten a good response from our year-end appeal for money, and the checks are coming in. Thank you for those who sent them. Keep them coming. The second thing is GBF has an account at Community Thrift, which is 473 Valencia Street. It's painted various shades of Pepto-Bismol pink. You can't miss it. And if you have anything that's no longer serving you, if you donate it there, we get a part of the proceeds. So I would encourage you to, especially if you got something this season, it's a good place to re-gift it. And check on their website to see what they take and they don't take, because they're very particular. It's been we've been making about $300 to $400 a quarter from that, so it's been very helpful to the solid.
Other announcements? Yes, Mark.
Yes, I am the host today. There's cookie and tea. Please help yourself, and if you have tea, make sure to clean out your cup with soapy warm water and rinse it out. There is a sign-up sheet on the Cadenza if people want to add your name to the list. And I'll be passing around a Donna Bowl. If you care to give, the suggested donation is $5 to $8. And then at around 12:30, we meet. Some of us meet at the door. If you care to go out for lunch and join some others.
Yes, Jerry.
Hey, well, thank you very much for coming today. Next week, our speaker will be Tom Moon.
Yes. Hey, one of the critical functions that has been that we need to refill. Bill, who's been doing our mailing list for a couple of years, needs to let go of that. And it's a simple but regular task of inputting some new names and then every 2 months generating a mailing list. He's done a gorgeous job of setting everything up. This will be a very smooth way to transfer. It's not a time-consuming, but it's an essential function of our Sangha and how we keep track of each other. And so if you have some computer ease and willing to learn maybe how to do a mail merge, which is something everyone should know how to do, talk to me, and you'll really be serving the community in a profound way. Thank you very much, although in a solitary. Thanks.
All right. Any other announcements? Okay, let's join hands in a circle for our dedication of marriage.
So I guess I'll just lead the dedication of merit. You're probably used to it. This is just a customary Buddhist thing to do. What we're doing here is considered very wholesome, just sitting with ourselves and looking into our own experience. We share that with all beings. And may the merits of our practice today and our collective energy, our shared intention to look into our own experience and to meet things as they are, see things as they are. May this serve for the welfare and the benefit of all beings everywhere. May all beings be happy. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings be free.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.